The Old Order Amish are known for their simple way of life. They reject automobiles in favor of horse-drawn buggies and decline Social Security, relying instead on mutual aid within their communities. Living in tightly knit, highly localized settlements, they strive to remain as separate as possible from mainstream society. Given their rejection of many modern technologies and their rural lifestyle, one might assume the Amish would go unnoticed. Easy to overlook, since they certainly don't post their adventures on TikTok. Yet, ironically, the Amish frequently become stars of the very mainstream culture they seek to avoid. From tourism in Amish country in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, to Weird Al Yankovic's Amish Paradise and the romantic Bonnet Ripper novels, yes, those exist, fascination with all things Amish has endured for decades. But with that fascination comes widespread misinformation and myth-making. So, who are the Amish, really? What do they believe? How do they live? And how do outsiders interpret them? Though commonly referred to collectively as the Amish, there is no single Amish identity. Think of Amish as an umbrella term encompassing numerous independent Christian groups that form a traditionalist branch of Anabaptism, a Christian movement that emerged during the Protestant Reformation, which we'll explore shortly. In the United States alone, Amish is really bad with any beginning. There are at least 40 distinct affiliations or subgroups, each with its own names, dress codes, technology policies, and rules about engagement with the outside world. Some have specific labels, such as Schwarzentruber Amish, New Order Amish, or Beachy Amish. Others lack formal names, but form recognizable, cohesive communities in specific towns or regions. Even the term Old Order Amish is misleading. Originally, it referred to the faction that emerged after a schism in the 1860s and 1870s. One group, the Amish Mennonites, leaned toward assimilation, while the Old Order Amish preserved older traditions. Yet, over the past 150 years, even Old Order Amish has come to describe a wide spectrum of groups, some more assimilated than others. Despite this diversity, Amish groups share significant commonalities. Scholars have identified 10 practices common to all Amish communities, including rural living, church-regulated clothing, and selective use of technology. Old Order Amish also speak a German dialect known as Pennsylvania Dutch or Pennsylvania German, a dialect originating from the Upper Rhine Valley. They refer to themselves as Amish and call other Americans English. They describe their lifestyle as plain, in contrast to the fancy mainstream. They also adhere to the beliefs outlined in the 1632 Dordrecht Confession of Faith, which articulates historically orthodox Christian doctrines about God, Jesus, sin, and salvation, along with Anabaptist-specific tenets such as separation from the world, commitment to nonviolence, and shunning or avoiding excommunicated members. In many ways, the Amish don't fit the conventional model of a Christian denomination. They lack a central governing body, unlike, say, the United Methodist Church's General Conference, which officially speaks for the denomination, defines doctrine, and ordains clergy. There are no formal seminaries, and all churches are led by lay ministers without theological training. Instead, as scholars note, Amish groups are connected through informal ties of family, ethnicity, and fellowship. Combined with the rarity of outsiders joining, this leads some researchers to classify the Amish not as a denomination, but as an ethno-religious group. The Amish trace their origins to the Protestant Reformation in early modern Europe, primarily among German-speaking communities in Switzerland and the Alsace region of eastern France. In 1525, a group of Christians in Zurich began performing what they called believers' baptism, baptizing adults rather than infants. This was radical because in medieval and early modern Europe, Infant baptism was the norm, and church and state were deeply intertwined. Baptism into the church was simultaneously baptism into the state. A movement of radical Protestants in the Netherlands and German-speaking regions sought to bypass this system, insisting that faith must be a conscious adult choice. They believed the church should be a separate, alternative community, and that nothing, not secular government, the Catholic Church, or any hierarchical institution, should stand between a believer and God. These radicals were called Anabaptists, or rebaptizers, a term of derision for their seemingly strange practices. In 1527, a subgroup known as the Swiss Brethren emerged in Switzerland as part of the broader Anabaptist movement. They articulated their principles in the Schleitheim Confession, which declared adult baptism the cornerstone of their faith and labeled infant baptism the highest and chief abomination of the Pope. The confession also laid a biblical foundation for separation from mainstream society and for church discipline, including the practice of shunning those who violated communal norms. Anabaptist radicalism provoked fierce opposition. Between 1527 and 1614, both Protestant and Catholic authorities tortured and executed thousands of Anabaptists in the Netherlands. In 1660, Tieleman van Braght documented these martyrdoms in his book, The Martyr's Mirror. Today, Amish and Mennonite communities still read The Martyr's Mirror as part of their religious tradition. Scholars note that the prominence of martyrdom narratives reflects the Amish emphasis on obedience to God's will, self-surrender, and trust in divine providence even amid persecution. A concept known as gelassenheit, or yielding to God's will, which scholars identify as the core value of Amish society. This focus on suffering and persecution also reinforces a deep-seated belief that the world cannot be fully trusted. Thus, early Amish identity was shaped by persecution and a profound sense of alienation from the surrounding world. Although Swiss authorities officially stopped executing Anabaptists in 1614, they continued to fine, imprison, or exile them. This drove many Swiss Anabaptists to seek refuge in more tolerant regions, especially Alsace, now eastern France, and the Palatinate in western Germany. Among them was Jacob Amman, the namesake of the Amish. He converted to Anabaptism and became an influential leader in Swiss Anabaptist circles in the late 1600s. Disillusioned by what he saw as excessive assimilation among other Anabaptists, Amman insisted on strict behavioral codes to ensure true separation from the corrupt state church. He demanded not only that Anabaptists avoid state churches, but also that they visibly distinguish themselves by refusing to shave beards or wear fashionable clothing. Interestingly, these dress codes mirrored secular norms of the time. Western European governments enforced sumptuary laws that regulated clothing by social class. So Amman's concern with attire wasn't uniquely religious, but reflected broader societal expectations. Though seen as a reformer, Amman based many of his ideas on the Dordrecht Confession, a Dutch Anabaptist statement from 60 years earlier that already endorsed practices like foot washing and shunning. Thus, in many ways, he was building on established tradition. After years of bitter disputes, a separate faction formed around him. Those who followed Amman became known as Amish, and by the late 1600s, dozens of Amish families had relocated from German-speaking Switzerland to Alsace. How did they end up in the U.S.? Peace in Alsace was short-lived. In 1712, King Louis XIV expelled Anabaptists from the region. Around the same time, rumors spread of a new colony in North America, Pennsylvania, where militia service wasn't required and religious tolerance was enshrined in law, at least compared to other colonies. Facing ongoing persecution, the prospect of owning farmland far from European lords was deeply appealing. So, in the 1700s, about 500 Amish settlers arrived in Pennsylvania. By the mid-1800s, some had moved to Ohio and Indiana. Those who remained in Europe gradually assimilated. The last European Amish congregation closed in 1937, merging with a local Mennonite community in Germany. In the U.S., however, the Amish thrived. In the 1800s, a major schism occurred. The Old Order faction upheld strict separation from the world, while Amish Mennonites embraced assimilation, eventually adopting electricity, home telephones, and automobiles. Despite the name, scholars don't consider Amish Mennonites Amish today, though Amish and Mennonites are close religious relatives. In Lancaster County today, you will find plainly dressed Mennonites easily mistaken for Amish. Today, roughly 400,000 Old Order Amish maintain their traditional lifestyle. The vast majority live in the United States. Outside the U.S., their numbers are small, about 6,000 in Canada, and a tiny settlement of 90 in Bolivia. Yet their population is growing rapidly, doubling every 2 decades. Central to Amish faith, practice, and identity is the concept of ordnung, German for order. Broadly, it refers to divine order dictating how to live, but it also denotes the unwritten rules governing each local settlement. Because the Amish lack a centralized hierarchy, the ordnung of one community can differ significantly from another. A Lancaster County settlement may operate under entirely different principles than one in Ohio. Yet all Old Order Amish communities adhere to an ordnung that regulates lifestyle, permitted technologies, occupations, and mutual aid. Some ordnungen are stricter than others, and the stricter they are, the more likely the group is considered Old Order. The Amish are perhaps best known for their general rejection of modern technology, though exceptions exist. They avoid home telephones, televisions, movies, the internet, personal computers, and grid electricity. They don't own or drive cars, preferring a hyper-local life limited by buggy travel. This keeps communities small, tightly knit, and self-sufficient. But this isn't total rejection. It's selective use. The issue isn't technology itself, but its potential to disrupt community cohesion. Mass media like the internet is seen as corrupting. Cars could scatter families across hundreds of miles. So, throughout the 20th century, as new technologies emerged, Amish communities had to decide what to accept or reject based on whether it threatened communal unity. Some technologies were readily adopted. You'll find pesticides, precision farm equipment, preciting farm equipment. You will find no tract of the program against me. Because of the best, forgetting the people look at hundreds of miles successful. Some technologies were called, and the century was looking at for general link, breaking these familiars of the man. They call often to the district communally wear into the second day. Some technologies were just they're better and made them for emerge, and the technologies were freach the deskment. The 2830 is the community were readily adopted. So throughout the 20th century, as new technologies for list, but the only community had seen threatened or reject, based on whether it threatened communal unity indisciply. Some technologies were readily adopted. Some technologies were sleepily adopted before future individual, because this news it believed that much more first removed. The massed media like themselves, you've interested what continue to accept or reject based on whether it threatened communal unity into the second day. Some technologies were creative multiple challenges as well as nothing to the district period. The minute motors in more freet, they were coming point about one far of the program in Movdard. Some technology were readily adopted. Some technologies were seemed about the 20th century. So throughout the 20th century, as new technologies were readily adopted. The man point is adopted. The man point was privately adopted. Some technology were readily adopted, instead the 2835 because they readily adopted. Some technologies were seen about 3.4 for emergement. So throughout the 20th century, as new technologies have accepted and provide, based on whether it threatened communal unity in discipline. Some technologies were readily adopted. Some technology were trulicit or reject. Mean so it's so interested on the interested, that it's so interested doesn't as a setup. As interested is were addictive that to development a lot of times with. The 2835 because they readily adopted. Some that was more desire at the same time. The man point is adopted with these most me. So throughout the 20th century, as new technologies had present and provide. Jumps against programs, and the visible is not accessed. The mass media like the internet, it could be readily adopted. So the 2005 millions is for them and more. Maybe of many a bit of Amish community, the generally says that we have no known water, it is not being set. Mean so technologies a big a time that they were not accessed with a life of a moved. The main point is the death of the same time. Then jumps against program is more likely about them. For me of many intranet, it want to discuss they match a readily adopted. This is another time in particular, there are visible in emerge. Jumps against introjective with serve and mentorally, they do have a bit of adopted. 4. The community technology of bisigninimum. Jumps against introjective was not accessed with a great for emerge. Means so, jumps against tumen happened. They ventures to be forget, they would not before arranged on the middle. Something that community se checked. They voke this effort to maturely provided. As new technologies across hundreds of miles, so throughout the 20th century, precision farm equipment, battery-powered buggy lights, and even solar panels. They don't oppose medical care. If a member is hospitalized, they use modern equipment and the channels. They don't oppose medical care. If a member is hospitalized, they use modern equipment. If a member is hospitalized, they'll clearly just a modern equipment. They don't oppose medical care. If a member is hospitalized, they'll change modern equipment. They'll use modern equipment. If a member is hospitalized, they'll change modern equipment. They loved more mental care. If a member is hospitalized, they'll make the middle care. They don't oppose medical care. If a member is hospitalized, they'll change modern equipment. They don't oppose medical care. If a member is hospitalized, they'll change modern equipment. They don't oppose medical care. If a member is hospitalized, they'll change modern equipment. They don't oppose medical care. If a member is hospitalized, they'll change modern equipment. They don't oppose medical care. If a member is hospitalized, they'll change modern equipment. They don't oppose medical care. If a member is hospitalized, they'll change modern equipment. They don't oppose medical care. If a member is hospitalized, they'll change modern equipment. They don't oppose medical care. If a member is hospitalized, they'll change modern equipment. They don't oppose medical care. If a member is hospitalized, they'll change modern equipment. They don't oppose medical care. If a member is hospitalized, they'll change modern equipment. They don't oppose medical care. If a member is hospitalized, they'll change modern equipment. They don't oppose medical care. If a member is hospitalized, they'll change modern equipment. They don't oppose medical care. If a member is hospitalized, they'll change modern equipment. They don't oppose medical care. If a member is hospitalized, they'll change modern equipment. They don't oppose medical care. If a member is hospitalized, they'll change modern equipment. They don't oppose medical care. If a member is hospitalized, they'll change modern equipment. They don't oppose medical care. If a member is hospitalized, they'll change modern equipment. They don't oppose medical care. If a member is hospitalized, they'll change modern equipment. They don't oppose medical care. If a member is hospitalized, they'll change modern equipment. They don't oppose medical care. If a member is hospitalized, they'll change modern equipment. They don't oppose medical care. If a member is hospitalized, they'll change modern equipment. They don't oppose medical care. If a member is hospitalized, they'll change modern equipment. They don't oppose medical care. If a member is hospitalized, they'll change modern equipment. They don't oppose medical care. If a member is hospitalized, they'll change modern equipment. They don't oppose medical care. If a member is hospitalized, they'll change modern equipment. They don't oppose medical care. If a member is hospitalized, they'll change modern equipment. They don't oppose medical care. If a member is hospitalized, they'll change modern equipment. They don't oppose medical care. If a member is hospitalized, they'll change modern equipment. They don't oppose medical care. If a member is hospitalized, they'll change modern equipment. They don't oppose medical care. If a member is hospitalized, they'll change modern equipment. They don't oppose medical care. If a member is hospitalized, they'll change modern equipment. They don't oppose medical care. If a member is hospitalized, they'll change modern equipment. They don't oppose medical care. If a member is hospitalized, they'll change modern equipment. They use modern equipment and follow food safety regulations. In the 1960s, when the government required milk to be stored in refrigerated tanks, Amish dairy farmers installed them, but powered them with diesel engines instead of grid electricity. Scholars call this cultural negotiation, selectively embracing what serves the community while rejecting what undermines it. Over time, changes to a group, ordnung determined whether it remained, Old Order. In 1927, the progressive beachy Amish split off over accepting home phones, cars, and relaxed shunning rules. Yet, despite their name, scholars don't classify them as Old Order Amish. This schism illustrates how technological change drives diversity within Amish society. Related to technology is the Amish emphasis on separation. Old Order communities live in rural districts where 20 to 35 families form a local church congregation called a Gemeinde, community. These groups are independent and not integrated into American towns, though not entirely isolated. The narrator, for example, grew up near Lancaster County and regularly visited a favorite Amish grocery store. So, while they avoid full integration, they selectively engage with the outside world, much like their approach to technology. Rooted in their Anabaptist pacifism, the Amish oppose military service. During World War I, many Amish men were drafted against their will and sometimes sent to the front lines. Afterward, Amish leaders lobbied for exemption, and by World War II, many secured conscientious objector status for non-combat roles. The Amish pay all taxes, local, state, federal, property, but are exempt from Social Security and generally reject insurance. Instead, they practice mutual aid through healthcare cost-sharing programs, sometimes going door to door to collect funds for approved medical expenses. Since these aren't insurance, there's no guarantee of reimbursement. Participation is seen as a religious duty, a tangible expression of faith that you'll be helped in your own time. And maybe that you'll be helped is unavailable to the lust. The topic is ready. It you be time of need is central. Among Old Order Amish, care for neighbors and community is actively cultivated. They believe inward piety, deep devotion to God, is insufficient. That devotion must be outward, active, and communal. Supporting fellow members becomes a religious practice, from barn raisings to storm cleanup to covering medical bills. Perhaps the most contentious aspect of Amish life in American society has been education. For most of the 20th century, Amish parents fought to control their children's schooling until the issue was settled in 1972 by the unanimous Supreme Court decision in Wisconsin v. Yoder. Before then, Amish parents used various tactics, like seeking work permits or boycotting school, to withdraw children after 8th grade. The Yoder ruling affirmed their right to limit education as an expression of religious freedom. Clothing is another visible marker of separation. Amish women wear plain, solid-color cotton dresses, aprons, and head coverings. Men wear black trousers, dark button-up shirts, and broad-brimmed hats. Married men must grow beards, but cannot have mustaches. If this sounds like a uniform, that's the point. Dress promotes uniformity and community unity. Individualism is virtually meaningless in Amish culture, associated with selfishness, pride, greed, or attention-seeking. Instead, the highest virtue is gelassenheit, self-denial and submission to God's will, which in practice means submission to the church community. Raising large, self-sufficient families and maintaining traditional gender roles are also central, from childhood through adulthood. Between ages 16 and 22, many Amish youth enter rumspringa, running around in Pennsylvania Dutch, a period of greater freedom to choose a spouse and, for some, decide whether to be baptized into the church as adults. If you've heard of rumspringa, you've likely encountered mythologized versions of Amish youth living wild, using drugs, drinking, partying. Indeed, some experiment with English life, wearing modern clothes, driving cars, even drinking or attending parties. Former Amish YouTuber C.J. Miller has shared personal accounts of rowdy Amish parties during his rumspringa. There have also been high-profile incidents, like 2 Amish men arrested for selling cocaine to a Pennsylvania biker gang. But for most communities that practice rumspringa, not all do, it simply means slightly more independence, socializing with other Amish youth without parental supervision. Most still live at home, so parents don't suddenly let teens move to cities for hedonistic adventures. For many, rumspringa means freedom to drive their own buggy, play volleyball, sing German hymns, or join a local baseball team. Though often framed as a time to choose baptism, most Amish youth fully intend to join the church. Instead, it's primarily a time to find a spouse, a rite of passage into adulthood. For a minority, however, it's an existential crossroads. Scholars describe rumspringa as a liminal period between parental oversight and church authority. Since they are unbaptized, they're not yet bound by church rules. Not that anything goes, but they haven't yet made that solemn commitment. Remember, adult baptism was a foundational Anabaptist conviction and remains central to Old Order Amish identity today. Another key ritual is communion. Unlike most Christian churches, Amish hold communion only twice a year, in spring and fall. It's an 8-hour marathon service featuring preaching, hymn singing, a shared meal, and the symbolic eating of bread and wine commemorating Jesus' death and resurrection per historic Anabaptist teaching. Regular worship occurs every other Sunday, usually in rotating homes. Services are led by lay ministers, married men elected from the Gemeinde, and include scripture reading, kneeling prayers, and a cappella hymns from the Ausbund, a German hymnal with texts dating to the 1500s and 1600s. All these traits make the Old Order Amish a classic example of what sociologists call high-commitment communities. Unlike most churches with low barriers to entry, Amish life demands total, all-encompassing devotion. For an outsider, joining would mean abandoning every aspect of former identity, making conversions extremely rare. In her seminal work, Commitment and Community, sociologist Rosabeth Moss Kanter studied 18th and 19th century American utopian communes and found that successful groups created reciprocal loyalty. Members showed deep commitment and received equally strong support in return. This self-reinforcing dynamic is key. Though Kanter didn't focus on the Amish, their communities exemplify this model perfectly. As one Amish minister put it, "Our brotherhood is based on self-denial, submission, and obedience." Despite their small size and preference for seclusion, the Amish consistently capture mainstream cultural attention. For many Americans, their simple life evokes nostalgia for a pre-digital age free from modern stress. They often romanticized as morally pure, physically strong, and exceptionally kind. This trend began in the 1950s. The 1955 Broadway musical Plain and Fancy, about a romance between an Amish girl and an outsider, sparked tourist interest in Amish country, the scenic hills of Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, where visitors enjoy handmade furniture and hearty meals at the Shady Maple Smorgasbord. Seriously, go! It's the narrator's favorite. They even offer free birthday meals. Scholars argue that Americans romanticize buggies, quilts, and bonnets as symbols of purity and innocence they feel is unattainable in modern life. A striking example is the boom in Amish-themed romance novels, colloquially called bonnet rippers. The genre has exploded in recent decades, with over 80 new titles published annually. Plots feature chaste romances. A traditional Amish woman uncovers a long-lost family secret, becomes a tragic widow, or feels tempted to leave her community for the fancy world, only to be rescued by a godly, devoted husband who missive how be a perfect father to her children. The term bonnet ripper is ironic. There's little ripping beyond occasional buggy accidents. Passion is limited to chaste cheek kisses and the charm of mutual, pure devotion. Given the massive sales of these novels versus the tiny Amish population, scholars ask three key questions. Who writes them? Who reads them? And why are they so appealing? The answer to the first two is the same: evangelical Christian women. Amish women do read them, but they're a small minority of readers. Most best-selling Amish fiction authors are evangelical Christians who neighbor the Amish. South Central Pennsylvania is essentially the northern edge of the Bible Belt, so many evangelicals live alongside plainly dressed Amish and Mennonites in Lancaster County. These are Christians who have Amish and Mennonite friends and a window into a radically different lifestyle. So why are these books so appealing to evangelical women whose lives are more worldly than Old Order Amish? In her book, Thrills of Purity, a great title, scholar Valerie Weaver Zurcher argues that setting Christian romance in Amish communities creates religious novelty. It doesn't just preach purity, it embodies it. As American religion scholar Lauren Kirby notes, evangelicals see themselves as besieged by modern moral decay, fighting to preserve their values in a corrupt culture. Thus, they view themselves as quintessentially American, yet cultural outsiders. They romanticize Amish communities as already pure spaces, contrasting them with mainstream America's perceived corruption. As Weaver Zurcher writes, Amish romances offer readers 3 layers of purity. Pure stories about pure characters living in a subculture that is itself impeccably pure. The Amish novel becomes an escape into a high-commitment community, a few hours of fantasizing about a different life without actually joining it. Indeed, evangelical authors have left a distinct mark on Amish fiction. Weaver Zurcher's research shows these popular novels reflect a uniquely evangelical spirituality, marked by emotional intimacy with Jesus and personal devotion, which is foreign to traditional Amish theology. Evangelical spirituality is deeply individualistic, while Amish life is profoundly communal. Thus, the Amish face a striking paradox. Though they've maintained remarkable separation from mainstream American culture, they simultaneously embody values like independence and the right to preserve one's way of life, values that are themselves quintessentially American. The Amish are thus perpetually engaged in cultural negotiation, carefully balancing their relationship with the outside world while preserving their distinct identity.